This is the Leica M8.2, an old digital camera from 2008. In this video, I want to share my thoughts and experience as someone who never really shoots a Leica M camera before. What's all the fuss with all these Leica M cameras, and is this camera any good, especially in 2024? Spoiler alert, specs doesn't always mean everything. Welcome to my channel, I'm Gary Wiryawan, and today I want to share my thoughts and experience of this awesome new old camera. This is the Leica M8.2 intro. So today I'm going to share my thoughts and my experience of the Leica M8.2, especially from a perspective of a guy who never really shoots a Leica M camera before, how it integrates into my overall camera collection, what function does it have, and is it any good, especially in 2024. So really quick, I just want to mention to you that this camera was given to me for free by my cousin. Thank you very much. Shout out to my cousin. But again, I just want to share my experience, especially because I never really have any experience shooting a Leica M before, and how it really opened up my eyes, not just to the Leica M camera quality, but also to the Leica M shooting experience. Anyway, I just want to mention some basic specification of the Leica M8.2. I'm gonna be really quick because you can find the detailed specification online easily. So, this camera was released in 2008 as a revision to the original Leica M8. It features a 10 megapixel APS-C CCD sensor from Kodak. So again, this is APS-C and not full frame. It is still larger than APS-C and it has a crop factor of 1.33. And the sensor is notoriously extremely sensitive to infrared light. The Leica M8.2 is also really chunky and heavy at 591 grams, much heavier than my other Micro Four Thirds cameras. The camera as a Leica M camera also don't have any kind of autofocus whatsoever. So this is just a good old classic rangefinder focusing system, which I will explain later. This camera also cannot shoot video at all, so this is strictly only a photography camera. And it also has a very slow, continuous shooting speed. So if you're doing burst shooting, it's gonna be like this. It's kind of slow and pathetic. This camera also doesn't have any kind of Bluetooth wireless capabilities. It doesn't have any kind of USB charging, no bells and whistles, no technology, just a very basic bare bone photography camera. After hearing the basic specification of the Leica M8.2, you might be asking, well, it doesn't have anything that's really impressive from the specs. Even the CCD sensor is really faulty. So what does it have that's any good? And the answer is great manual shooting experience. Let me explain. So over here, as you can see, we have the viewfinder. It's really bright, it's really large, has a really nice magnification, and it's really useful for that rangefinder manual focusing system. And over here, we have a dedicated shutter dial. So you can use it to select whatever shutter speed that you want. And you can still even use auto shutter like aperture priority and that kind of stuff. So really nice. And over here on the lenses, I will talk about the lenses later on, but on every Leica M lens, you will have a dedicated aperture ring right here and a dedicated manual focusing ring as well. So this creates a really nice manual shooting experience. And that leads me nicely into sharing my shooting experience. Again, the emphasis is that the specs of the camera might be really underwhelming. It doesn't have anything at all, just a very bare bone camera. But real world shooting experience is completely different. I have so much fun and joy whenever I got a chance to use the Leica M8.2. This camera is really addicting. It's full of fun stuff and I'm having a blast whenever I'm going out shooting with this camera. This camera is my introduction to the Leica M shooting experience, and all that I can say is that this Leica M shooting experience is completely addicting. There is something about using the rangefinder focusing system of this camera to nail the focus, as well as setting all the individual exposure settings carefully, slowly with this camera, that makes me really appreciate this Leica M8.2. Let me explain a little bit about the rangefinder focusing system. So to focus, you have to use the viewfinder right here, and the viewfinder isn't actually connected to the lens. So what you see isn't always what you get. The framing is a little bit off, and on the viewfinder you can see two things: some guidelines like a rectangular kind of thing on the periphery of the whole viewfinder area to help you with your framing, especially with certain focal lengths. It has like 35 and 50 and 75 or 90 millimeter kind of guidelines in there. And then second thing, it has a rectangular box in the middle, very small box that you have to line up carefully, and that will aid your focus. So as you turn the manual focus ring on the lens, that box will slowly go from left to right, and you have to align it with the rest of what you see in the viewfinder to nail perfect focus. To any guy who never really shoots a Leica M camera before, all of the process that I just mentioned to you might sound complicated and slow and dated and just overall difficult, makes you not want to go out and take picture. But actually, when you start using it in real life, it's kind of different. You start to become addicted to this process. It really slows you down, and it puts you into this zone, as I call it, where you focus 100% on the photography process, on trying to nail the focus, on trying to get the perfect picture, and you kind of forget whatever happens in the real life right at that moment, and you start to become immersed in this photographical process, and you start to have that powerful feeling that you are in control of your image, not the autofocus motor, not the camera processor. It's you. You are the creator of the image, and that feeling is really powerful, and it really opened my eyes, and that's the kind of nice experience that I can only get with this kind of camera, not with a modern technological camera with lots of features. Now, some people might be asking, hey Gary, what if we want to not worry about the focus at all? We just want to be really quick with the Leica M8.2 and do run and gun kind of shooting style like street photography. And the answer is to employ what we call zone focusing. So I've done it all the times with my Micro Four Thirds camera, especially with manual focus lenses and especially with wider angle lenses. It's a little bit difficult to do with telephoto lens, but if you have anything equivalent to 35mm or wider, it's actually quite simple. You just set the aperture to be slightly smaller, maybe f5.6, maybe f8 or f11, and then by making the aperture smaller, you have more things that are in focus, and you can rely on the hyperfocal distance and know that anything from a few meters away from you up until infinity will always be in focus. Anyway, besides the rangefinder focusing method, everything else about this camera is also really slow. Even previewing images takes a lot of time, and that makes me do not want to chimp into the LCD screen just to preview the images that I just captured. But that's the beauty of this camera. Makes you slow down, makes you zone in the photography kind of world, you know, and forget about whatever happens in real life. And that's the closest thing that you'll ever get to an analog camera, but still using a digital camera. Please keep in mind that the Leica M8.2 is a really old camera, 16 years old from 2008. So with the rangefinder focusing system, it's a little bit finicky, and also very fragile, and it's very prone to off calibration. Mine was not calibrated at all when I got this camera, so I have to calibrate it myself by adjusting the horizontal and vertical rangefinder focusing system by taking off the lens mount and also taking off the Leica logo and using screwdriver and hex keys to get it corrected. And now it is already corrected, but it may take a while for you to correct those kind of things. So now let's talk about the image quality of the Leica M8.2. This will be my favorite part of this video because now I get the chance to share my sample pictures taken using this camera so that you can judge for yourself whether the images look good or not. First, let's talk about the 10 megapixel APS-H CCD sensor. First, it's only 10 megapixel. It might not sound that much, but for me personally, it's more than enough. I don't really print my images, and 10 megapixel is plenty enough for digital viewing and also to look at my computer and maybe print it into A3 or A4 kind of size. More than enough. But more importantly, the colors from the CCD sensor. Although the sensor is really prone to infrared light, it can still produce wonderful colors, especially when you put IR cut filter into your lenses. The color will become much more accurate, and there's just something a little bit filmic and nostalgic from the images coming out from the CCD sensor of the Leica M8.2. And I kind of like it. It feels very analog. It feels very warm. I don't know if warm is the correct word or not, but I just get that feeling that it's like shooting with an old camera, but it's digital. The APS-H sensor size of the CCD sensor in the Leica M8.2 is also wonderful because with the larger sensor size, you can get more background blur, which is nice for portraits and also for close-up photography. You get that nice 3D kind of look of the bokeh or the background blur, but it's also a little bit more difficult to nail precise focusing with the manual rangefinder focusing system, especially if you are using longer telephoto lenses. For my Leica M8.2, I'm only using a 35mm lens by TTArtisan. This is an f2 lens, and it's already difficult enough for me, so I cannot really imagine using a telephoto lens with this guy. Let's quickly talk about the infrared sensitivity of the sensor of this camera, and it was really bad. If you're shooting someone wearing a black shirt under direct sunlight, the black shirt will turn into maroon, reddish, grayish kind of color that I don't really like, and it's kind of weird when you look at it. It's kind of funny as well. And if you're shooting greeneries like plants' leaves under direct sunlight, you will also make the leaves turn into brownish color, and I just don't really like it. Luckily, as I mentioned before, you can use an IR cut filter on your lens with this camera to make the color accurate again, and that really solves the IR sensitivity problem. Anyway, images taken using the Leica M8.2 are usually very sharp, very detailed, very nice, provided that they are in focus. Just keep in mind that dynamic range is a little bit limited with the Leica M8.2 because of the sensor technology of that time. It wasn't really that great. So if you overexpose, especially when you're shooting landscape photography with beautiful sky, if you overblown the sky, then you cannot really recover it even though you are shooting RAW or the NG format on this camera and use Lightroom or Photoshop to kind of pull back the highlight. You cannot really recover it. So you have to be really careful with your exposure. Also, although the sensor size of this camera, which is APS-H, is larger than the sensor size of my usual micro four thirds camera, ironically, low light performance of this camera is notoriously really bad. Anything above ISO 640 and you will lose a lot of detail and you'll start to see too much grain on your image. Yeah, it's ironic because Micro Four Thirds used to be the underdog when it comes to low light performance, but now the Leica M8.2 takes the cake for the winner of the worst low light performer in my camera collection. Anyway, regardless of all the shortcomings of the Leica M8.2, especially in terms of image quality, I can still say that the images taken using this camera were really nice. I'm very happy with the image quality of this camera. Again, provided that you don't go beyond the limits of what this camera is capable of, this camera can still produce wonderful results. So in conclusion, I just want to re-emphasize that specs of a camera don't always matter. What matters the most, in my opinion, is the real world usage experience. This camera provides me with a lot of fun and enjoyment, although this is an underwhelming camera in terms of specification. It gives me that involvement in the picture creating process, and that's a really nice experience that I cannot really get with a lot of modern day digital cameras. Most modern day digital cameras focuses more on the autofocus speed, on the megapixel, on the better processing, on this technology, on that technology. But this Leica M8.2 goes on the opposite direction and still can provide you with a really nice shooting experience. As I mentioned on many of my other videos, photography isn't just about the end result, isn't just about getting a nice picture, but it's also about having fun, enjoying every steps that you have to take when you are doing photography, really immersing into the process of photography. If you're not having fun with photography, then it's useless, and this camera provides me with a lot of fun and enjoyment when it comes to photography process. Now the big question, is this camera worth it? Well, there's no easy answer to that question. If you're doing photography for a living, if you're a professional photographer, photographing in a demanding environment, or even for travel photography, I think there are lots of better options than this camera. However, if you just want to enjoy your photography time, you want to have lots of fun, really immerse in the process of photography, forget about what happens in the world and just enjoy photography, then this is the right camera. And that wraps up today's video. So that is all for today's video about the Leica M8.2. I hope that this has been interesting, useful, and informative for you. And let's have a discussion in the comment down below. What is your favorite camera when you just want to have fun with photography and forget about what happens in the world and just immerse yourself in the world of photography process? Please comment down below. And if you have any question, also comment down below as well, and I will try my best to answer. Also, don't forget to support my channel by liking this video, sharing this video, subscribing to my channel down below. And if you want to support my work even further, consider using the affiliate links in the description below, or use the super thanks button to make a small donation to my channel. Thank you, and I will see you on the next video. Goodbye.